Bangladesh, it's the labor rights and trade union activist Nazma Akhtar.
Thank you, Tara. First of all, I would like to say sorry because my English reading is not that good. Sorry for that. And greetings and from the Asia and Regional Labor Movement. I'm here to represent the 85,000 members of the Garments Workers Union I form, but it also for the hundreds million of women working in the Asia-Pacific region as the engine of Asia and the world economical growth. Like any, and my story is not that is driving by the poverty, by exploitation and the belief that solidarity and collective action is our only path to development justice. I've been working as a garments worker at 11 years old. I left school and studied my mother to in the factory she was working at. In the year that followed, experience and show dangerous work environment, unpaid waste or overtime, lack of maternity leave, sexual harassment and fear, opposition to trade union and freedom of association. You are already probably aware the Rana Plaza collapse. This was one of the main deadly results of labor exploitation in Bangladesh. While a lot of attention has gone to the death and health and safety issues and the corruption and employers' threat that lead to women being forced to work in a being they know as unsafe was. Less attention has gone to the right to organize and to a living wages as well as other labor rights. I wonder what the Sustainable Development Agenda means for garments workers. The goal sounds beautiful. Ending child labor by 2020. Achieve full employment and decent work. Eliminating the gender pay gap. Ensuring safe and secure work as well as ending poverty, hunger, gender inequality, driving universal health care, free education for all, tackling climate change and reducing inequality between rich and poor as well as between countries. But unfortunately, the fail to tackle the root cause of inequality to deliver real system change. That's nothing that address to importance of living ways to protect trade union rights. The Sustainable Development Goal include a target to end child labor, but it needs to be made clear that my parents, in fact, no parents want me to work as a child. Instead, it was the only way to survive. My parents' income was not enough to allow a family to survive. There are few choices for parents. If girl cannot work, they are likely to be forced to early marriage and even sold in indentured labor like brick making. Women garments workers are less likely to be forced to child marriage, and we have one of the highest rates of child marriage in the world. and we are less likely to pay dowry. So the way to end child labor is not generating living wage and social protection, is not to criminalize. Government are still developing indicators that the major progress towards sustainable development. They are proposing that the right to decent work to be measured by country death and injury in the workplace and by the number of conventions signed. In Bangladesh, we know too well that the continued dead bodies does not result in living wage. In union rights, in social protection, in less discrimination or sexual harassment or injustice for the dead or injured workers and their families. I just like the newer garments workers of 100 years ago, we want more than survivor. We want bread and roses too. If there was justice, one indicator to measure decent work, it should be the percentage people, particular women who are number of trade union able to genuinely assert workers' rights and collective bargaining. The right to independently union is the right that unlock all other. A global communication to given living wage mechanism is the enough to live with dignity, happiness, and support to our family is an urgent need. We well as being essential for our human rights, its world support company threatening to moving from one country to next in a ending such for the cheapest and most exploitation labor. But it's not just lack of communication to honor labor rights that undermines that development goal. There is no communication to change the economical system that allow compensation to avoid the tax. To hide behind unstable supply chain, to use offers bank account or to pay the damage they do to people's life and the environment. There is also no money being committed to help less development country to develop the public service, institution and social protection we need. The government know and have even publicly recognize that the problem of growing inequalities documented. They do not serve or represent the instead of the people, instead by the representative in the instead of the healthy and powerful and of corporation. Is this case in Bangladesh and in this case in USA? I know that the only way to regain our rights, dignity and power to organize local and globally. We risk our life and livelihood when we take action, when we organize and when we strike. But we know we have no other choice. So today I'm asking you to thinking about join us to start a global movement to strike to regain our demands, strike to regain our economic, strike to regain our plant of people, not profit, strike to regain to our power as workers. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nazma. Leanne, can you throw another chant our way?
When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. When workers' rights are under attack, what do we do? Stand up, fight back. What do we do? Stand up, fight back.
Thank you. Straight on to our next delegate, please. From Nigeria, if the Honorable Delegate would please come up to the People's Chair. Celestine Ogoni, from the Campaign Against Shell and a union leader. He made it past the booby trap. There you are.
Thank you very much. Good evening, comrades, and I welcome myself, and I welcome all of you here. To be very candid, I didn't know that I was speaking here tonight. True, I didn't know because we were at the UN, and when we were coming back, I told Jiten that I want to go to the hotel. He insisted that no, we have to come to Washington Square. I said no, but I was here yesterday. No, those of you who were here yesterday, I spoke here yesterday briefly, and we walked, and that I was going to the hotel, but he insisted. So I came in here only for the organizer to come to me that, you were supposed to speak here. And I said, wow. So it is an honor, and I cherish the opportunity given to me. I bring you greetings from the oppressed, marginalized, economically disempowered, cheated Ogoni people in the Niger Delta, Nigeria. Yesterday, I don't mention it, that Ogoni is an indigenous, distinct ethnic nationality with our culture, our different language in Nigeria. You know, Nigeria is made out of over 250 ethnic nationalities, forced to live together for the administrative convenience of the white men that colonized Nigeria. So you have people speaking different languages. You have families that were separated. Some are in Sierra Leone, some are in Benin Republic, some are in... Most of you that know Adebayo, the footballer that plays for Togo, is a Nigerian, and families are separated. So that country is, somehow I can call it a very confused arrangement that Flora saw the wife of Lord Lugard, the colonial master, forced together for their own convenience and to our own pain. And so we've been living there with some communities they call the majority, and we are the minority. So they are in charge of power. They are in charge of the government and everything, and they run it. And so the Ogoni are consigned to a second-class citizen in Nigeria. But we cherish where God put us. We used to have a very rich farming, harvest, and fishing. And we've been living there until oil was discovered in commercial quantity in 1958. Of course, when Shell came, they lied to the people that, you know, you are a farmer, you go to farm, you suffer, you toil, you clear the bush, you plant your seeds and all other things, and it takes you 1 year to get the harvest. But oil will give you money every day. So I tell you that the people in their ignorance roll out the drums, declare holidays that the white man was coming, development was coming, We were going to enjoy our children. We have scholarship. They will get good jobs. We will live well. We have electricity, everything. But my people waited for 30 years. The reverse was the case. They were beginning to see the other side of having oil in Africa. The harvest from their farmlands was becoming nothing to write home about. Oil spills have polluted the river completely. All the fishes were gone. Gas were being flared. Most of you have heard about gas flaring, but you've not seen it. Gas were being flared in very close proximity to human habitation, 24 hours a day for 30 years. You know that when you flare gas, soot emitted in the process of flaring gas later fall as acid rain. Anybody it touches, anywhere it touches is dead because it's acid. And because we are fishermen and farmers, as the acid was destroying the farmlands, the fishes were running away to the deeper ocean where the Ogoni man does not have a sophisticated fishing trawler. Because as long as the flower, the tree was flaring, there was also daylight in the river. So you now have 24 hours daylight in the river. Because even at night, the flaring is also light in the river. So fishes can stay. They have to migrate. We don't have money to buy trawlers. And to make matter worse, the mangrove forests around that serve as a home for breeding of fishes were gone because of the acidic nature of the spill. The oil spill has destroyed the mangrove. Women that survive with picking periwinkle, the seafoods around, have nothing to do anymore. Fishing, they can't fish anymore. Farming, nothing. And it is money from the fishing and farming that the Ogoni people use to send their children to school, especially in an environment where government has failed, where public school system has failed, where government does not provide electricity or water, pipe-borne water. And Shell, that is stealing the oil for 30 years, claim that every money meant for community, the rent and royalty, has been given to the government. And people that are sitting over the government are enemies of Ogoni people. They come from the major ethnic groups. They don't live there. They don't feel the pains of the Ogoni people. So because of that poverty that has stepped in, Ken Saro-Wiwa, most of you know about him. At the time, he was well-traveled all over the world. He has gone to Norway. He has gone to Texas. He has seen what oil can do for people, how oil has bettered the life of citizens, and why was the reverse in Ogoni, where in one community there are two different sets of people. The Ogonis were living here in darkness, while the camp that the oil companies stay, there was 24-hour electricity. You are drilling oil from our land. We go to your gate to go and beg for water, and you call the police and the army to flog people and kill people. So Ken mobilized the Ogoni people and said, enough was enough. They have taken enough. For 30 years, we have nothing to show than poverty and hunger. If you are not ready to give us what you have taken from Ogoni, the rent and royalty is $30 billion. If you can't give us, pack your load and go. And the Ogonis were very, very serious about it. It was the first time in the history of Nigeria that unarmed community people will be adopting a non-violent struggle against violent organizations like the Nigerian government and Shell. But Ken said, yeah, that Martin Luther King and Gandhi adopted non-violent struggle and they succeeded. But nations that use arms that are weak and carry gun against violent organizations like Shell has capacity to overthrow government, and they have done that in several nations. Anywhere their interest was at stake, they overthrow the government, not to talk of small Ogoni. So what they did then was to call in the military to chase the Ogoni people. They flocked to the Ogoni people. They were shooting everybody at sight. In fact, on January 4th, 1993, the Ogoni people gathered. That is the day set aside by the World Health Organization to talk about indigenous people. Ogoni took their decision and said, from today, Shell should go, and Shell left. What they did was to bring the military, kill everybody. Total, about 2,000 people were murdered in Ogoni. On Ken Saro-Wiwa, the leadership, they were framed up for murder and charged in a military tribunal. They were sentenced to death on October 31st, 1995, and given 30 days right of appeal. While the lawyers were still filing paper for appeal, these men, educated men that committed no offense, were marched to the gallows and executed. And nothing has been given to the people as we speak. But reluctantly, because of pressure, in 2007, United Nations, UNEP, United Nations Environment Program with Nigerian government said, okay, the Ogonis were making noise. Let's go and conduct the environmental impact. Let's confirm that their land was polluted. And they did that job, submitted a report on August 4, 2011. The report says that there is hydrocarbon in the air Ogoni breathe, in the water, that there is cancer-causing carcinogen in the water, that 5 meters of the land was dead, that water taken in Ogoni is 900 times worse than level recommended by World Health Organization, and 1,000 times worse than level recommended by, in the Nigerian standard. And that Shell and Nigerian government should commit $1 billion and they should commence immediate cleanup of Ogoni. The federal government of Nigeria received the report in 2011. I can tell you that as I speak, nothing has been done. Yet they are talking about a development that will leave nobody behind. The Ogonis have been left behind. And I think that injury to one, injury to all. It does not matter color. We have a common enemy. We must come together and make sure that we deal with these bastards and we take over. They are just 1%. We are 99%. Thank you and God bless you.
Thank you. Clearly, this is an honorable delegate that needs no preparation. That was amazing. Thank you, Leon.
Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation. Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation. Money for jobs and education, not for war and occupation.
Thank you. Moving right on, our next delegate, the delegates list. Our next delegate is actually from Pakistan. He'll be speaking to us about farmers' movements in Pakistan. Please welcome Wali Haider.
Thank you. So, when people united,
We'll never be defeated.
when people united,
We'll never be defeated.
just a while ago, Leon asked me to, if I am willing to speak. So, I gladly accepted because it's not UN side event or UN, you know. We are among peoples. Whatever in my heart I can share. So I'm here to share what is happening in Pakistan. They think we are fool at the UN summit. They think that we don't have our mind. They are wrong. We are here, the People's Assembly, and rejecting whatever they have decided for us. And we will decide for ourselves what is our goals and what is our indicators. The people will have their own indicators and their goals. And no matter what they will do, because the MDGs will have not been delivered, SDGs will not deliver, because the same corporate interest have been inbuilt in the new Agenda 2030. And the people in Pakistan and elsewhere in the third world countries, especially, particularly the farmers, have nothing to do with this kind of initiative. They have not been consulted. The local communities have not been aware. The national governments, like MDGs, have never been consulted, and there was no genuine consultation have been made with whom the development have been designed, with whom, for whom these development have been designed. Only for the corporate sector. The only 10 multinational corporations, agri-giants, have 70% of the world big business. And I guess that after this document, there will be more few. The big fish will eat small fish, and there will be 3-4 multinational will have 70-80% of the agriculture business. And then when there is a flood and there is earthquake, who suffer? The farmers, mostly the farmers. They have their livelihood when there is normal days, but when there is flood, they lose their animals, livestock, their crops, their life. In Pakistan, in the villages, there is no schools already. There is no health facilities. In this kind of, there is no drinkable water in majority of Pakistani villages. And I suppose in each third world countries, the situation is same. But here we are talking about technology transfer, financing for development, and God knows what, these jargons. And people at the ground don't know about all these, what is happening. And witness that the corporation have been taken over in agriculture business and food and agriculture, and people have been dying. More than, according to FAO, more than 1 billion is hunger-like situation in Asia and the Pacific. And then in Pakistan, more than 50% have been under poverty line. So for those for whom these kind of fancy negotiations among these nation states have been crafted, it's to facilitate and to guide and to intervene corporate interests in a more powerful way. Who will control this green economy business? Who will control this, this green energy business? Again, the same multinational corporations will have the control of in the name of the green energy and cleaning the environment. So, what is needed? And for this, I just want to share that last month in Pakistan they had passed national seed. The governments are supposed to help and facilitate their citizens, but here in our part of the world, the government facilitate the multinationals, especially Monsanto. They have passed a bill called Seed Act 2015, where multinational will have the right over seed and agriculture business, and the farmer will not have the right of ownership and property of their own seed. What is this joke? Farmer who have been breeding and keeping, regenerating seeds since centuries have no more access and control over their agriculture input. What is this? And now they are talking about genetically modified fortification, all that which required more technological innovation and more corporation control. So in such kind of situation, the only path we need is to organize and mobilize. Unless or until the small and landless farmer, those who are marginalized, the women, the indigenous people, the fishermen, all marginalized communities come together, and like my friend mentioned, we have one enemy and we all are the one. So there are no ifs and buts. They are very clear cut. They are they and we are we. And we have to be united. And unless or until we mobilize and organize ourselves in a massive way, unless we will organize in a mass movement, we are not going to change our lives. And here, to be here, we just has remarked that we are here to remind you that whatever you are doing, we are rejecting that, and we will create our own path and our own way. Thank you very much.
All right, just before I final delegate for this segment, just to let you know what's happening in the program, there's one more delegate to come, followed by a question and answer session where you get the chance to interact with the individual delegates, and then we'll break for some very well-deserved snacks. So next up is our final delegate for this segment. From Fiji, a gender and transitional justice and young women's leadership specialist, it's Veena Singh. Welcome.
Nisambula Vinaka, Namaste, Maori, Kia ora. Hello. I am very appreciative of this opportunity to be able to share our Pacific climate activist call of action here at the People's General Assembly. We are Pacific climate activists in all our diversities and directly affected by the grave crisis, injustices, and inequalities of climate change. Right now, we, the Pacific climate activists and other Pacific allies, are working in every local, national, regional, and global space we can identify. We are expressing our concerns and delivering demands for meaningful and just action on climate change at every level in all possible arenas, at the local, national, regional, and global level. We're taking action everywhere, in our homes, neighborhoods, villages, agricultural gardens, fishing grounds, sacred places, worship sites, community organizations, workshops, workplaces, and schools. We are making our presence known at our parliaments, conference, embassies, and local government buildings, in corporate headquarters of carbon polluters and energy companies, at the ballot box, in the news media, on social media, and at the front doors of all those with the power to change the trajectory of climate change. We will talk, sing, stand, and sit. We will lobby, advocate, hold vigils, protest, blockade, and barricade. We will take action in the smallest villages, the largest cities, the highest mountains, in the oceans, and at the UN Climate Conference in Paris. We are taking on and talking with everyone possible and working in the smallest groups and widest social movements. We're also making sure that everyone is clear on some of our key Pacific CSO messages in these final weeks of COP21. Climate change changes everything. Climate change is everyone's work. Pacific people are fed up with the inaction and the low ambition of polluter and industrialized states, North and South. We want action right now. We are experiencing loss and damage now. Let's change political will, policies, and lifestyles. System change is required to our economic, social, and environmental systems. Yes, that means we want to see an end to extractive polluting. 1.5 degree temperature rise is our maximum safe level to stay alive. Some atoll states may not even be around in decades if sea level keeps rising and you keep polluting. We want a nuclear-free world. We want an end to the biodiversity loss. Over 150 to 200 species are becoming extinct every day. We want system change, not climate change. What can you do? Please, pressure your elected governments. Tell them what we all expect, loudly. We call for urgent, immediate, proactive, and political commitment for our survival. Join us and support this urgent call for the continued survival of our homes, our people, our islands, our Pacific. We no longer have time. It's a matter of our survival. Pacific people demand climate justice. Let's stand with Pacific.
Thank you very much to the Pacific delegate and to all the honorable delegates who spoke so eloquently just now. I'd like to open it up for a question and answer session. I'd just like to remind us all that we've only got 15 minutes for the question and answer segment. So if you could please keep your comments very clear, very precise, and brief. And if you could please introduce yourself before asking your question. The floor is now yours.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Priscilla Chakba from Women Environmental Program, Nigeria. Mine is not a question, but a contribution. And just to say that what Celestine spoke about, the Ogoni people, unfortunately, he did not mention the impacts the women are going through. And I think that that is very key, because majority of the women in Ogoni land right now are suffering from all kinds of diseases, ranging from cancer to still childbirth and to all kinds of things. And that is something that is a very serious issue. We need a mass movement of women organizations in Nigeria. Unfortunately, we have very few. And the question is, how do we make that very, very prominent? At the moment, we have a government, a president that talks very much about implementing the UNEP report. And for him to do that, I think we need the civil society organizations and civil society groups, especially women groups, to make sure that they hold him accountable for his promises to making sure that he implement the report. And at the same time, we also need to organize and mobilize for climate change. That is one of the things that he said, that his own agenda is going to be making sure that he addresses the issues of climate change. And I think that is very important. We need your support to be able to do that, because together we stand, united, divided where we fall, but united we stand. Irrespective of where you come from, climate change is impacting and is impacting negatively. And the people that are affected are mostly women and children. And therefore, we need to stand up. We need to carry the campaign forward. And that brings me to the campaign that the Women and Gender Consistency of the UNFCCC are carrying out worldwide. Each of us must sign up to that campaign. Don't wait until you are being told. Don't wait until it happens to you, because an injury to one is an injury to all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for that reminder of the women's call to global action on climate change, and you can hashtag that Women for Climate Justice with the symbol 4. Also, just from our comms team here, if you're tweeting from today's event, the hashtag is Development Justice. Are there any more questions or comments? Yeah, we've got one there.
Hi, I'm Georgina from Catapult. We do gender equality crowdsourcing. Oh, that's fine. So I recently saw that the Hungarian president is going to talk to the EU, even though he's being blamed for some human rights abuses. How do you think that we should deal with like hypocrisy / human rights abuses when they're going on right in the UN?
Thank you. I'm going to throw the question to Kate or to one of the delegates. Kate, would you like to answer, or would one of the other delegates like to take that off Kate? No?
Maybe I can start and then somebody else can say. So your question was about hypocrisy with the member states, particularly.
Yeah, and how, like, I understand that, like, you know, some people are going to be part of the UN, whether
right.
they like it or not. So how can we do that, like, productively and, like, realistically?
Yeah. I mean, I think it is important for us to continue to engage with the UN. For that reason, we have to call out governments and their hypocrisy, and we have to stand witness to what they're doing as much as the space allows us to. Today I was sitting in the General Assembly, and I heard, for example, Obama make his speech. What were his? I think his 3 commitments were gender equality, addressing gender inequality, addressing inequality between people, and stopping war. And I guess there's a few little tips we could give him. Sign the CEDAW Convention, end the TPP negotiations, stop corporate power, and perhaps stop invading countries. That might be some tips we could provide. So I think that we do have some access to some governments as well who we need to lobby directly, and we need to keep that UN space open, but we can't do it uncritically. And that's the problem, that sometimes the door is only open when you're quiet. and even I guess there has been some encouragement, some suggestion that perhaps we shouldn't be complaining that any didn't get selected because it might shut down civil society space, but we believe that we can do both. We can go in there, we can hold governments accountable as much as possible. We know that's not the answer, so that's why we have to do things inside and outside.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or responses from the other delegates on that point? Yeah, we've got a question here.
Hello, my name's Mohammed Khatir. I'm a freshman at Seton Hall University in New Jersey. I'm a part of United Nations MGTY, major group on children and youth. I have a few people in here that are also with me, fellow friends and such. I guess one question I'll propose to the entire room is, how do you think that we can encourage youth to become more involved? In and out throughout this whole week, I've been in and out the UN, talking about youth perspectives in terms of food security, accountability of governments and such. Me being a Palestinian Arab, I know a bit about accountability and the hypocrisy of governments. So I guess in general, how do you think that we can get youth more involved and youth to pressure those in power to show that we are here and that we do pose a relativeness in terms of accountability and such within the UN and around the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would one of the delegates who work particularly with young people perhaps like to answer this, say Veena or any? So the question from the floor was around how do we get more youth engaged in these processes, in these movements? Yeah, it looks like Veena will. Do you see how the People's Secretary General does her own mic running?
How do we get youths involved? For us in the Pacific, firstly is to make sure that it's not tokenistic, to ensure that when we're working with young people, we're actually involving them from the very beginning and not just say, hey guys, this is what we need you to do, come on. So one thing that we've learned in the Pacific is to ensure that they're part of the planning, the designing of a particular program or activity, sharing with them about a particular issue and how that affects them, and also get to hear from them rather than just a one-way, one-way learning style. So I think that's for us in the Pacific, and I'm sure that can be some of the learnings for you. Mariah, do you want to add something more? This is Mariah, my colleague. We work together.
Hi, Bulavinaka. My name is Mariah from Fiji. Another thing that we need to consider for young people activists is that normally young women is often often coupled or buried within that youth category. We should also be clear that young women have special needs compared to young men. That's not to say that young men are more not undermining young men either. But I think it's also key that as young activists, we also need to lobby elected members of parliament and other spaces that we're involved in. And it's also, I'm just like to finish off what Veena said, not only we don't want to be recipients of services, we like to be agents of change as well. So that's why we need to involve ourselves in every process that there is. Thanks.
Thank you. This Secretary General keeps giving the mic to Fijians. So is there anybody else from another region that would like to ask a question? There you go. You're not Fijian, are you? No, okay then.
Hi, I'm Tilitna. I'm one of the youth delegates from Sri Lanka. My colleague over here is the other one. So firstly, with regards to Monsanto, I think Sri Lanka is one of the few countries that banned one of the constituent chemicals of Roundup. So Roundup pesticide is no longer used in Sri Lanka because it causes kidney problems in Sri Lanka, which is a huge problem within the agricultural region. So I want to raise a question about climate change. Now, a lot of questions were asked how we can take action right now. And something that I've worked in Sri Lanka with spreading a new concept from a Sri Lankan is the concept of carbon negative products and carbon negative consumerism. So in USA, there's a lot of new startups coming up with carbon negative products. And now I see a lot of, there's an organization that's against the TPP. So the way to fight the TPP is to encourage these local startups to create a consumer market for American produced carbon negative products. And that way, there's a company called Air Carbon that basically takes carbon from the atmosphere to produce plastics. So basically, if there's a consumer market for such products, we'll be basically buying the carbon that's creating climate change and using it in our day-to-day lives. So that is a way to fight climate change today, right now. And for that, we need to use the existing system of consumerism in a positive way. So while it is true we need to bring down the system, sometimes certain components of the system can also be used to create results today and tomorrow and immediately, while a long-term concept is to break down the system. So that is just a concept that I would like to bring up, and I hope that civil society organizations also take up the idea of spreading carbon negative consumerism. And I would like to ask whether you all have taken such actions as your organization. Thank you.
Thank you. So a very perhaps controversial question, can consumerism be positively used in this sense? But before I open it up to responses to that from delegates, I'll take one more question from the floor here. Alejandra?
Yeah, as a member of this development justice movement and as a feminist, that I'm still also struggling about, where does change happen? Where do we take this conversation forward? If we stay in the UN as a movement, right? If we stay in the UN as a development justice movement, what we would like to change, to make it work? What are we proposing, so that it works for us? And working outside as a movement, as a development justice movement, apart from creating our own spaces, what other spaces we should go and knock to activate change?
All right, so we've got two strong questions on the floor. I might take it back to the delegates now. Would someone like to answer the climate change related question about a possible techno-fix approach and harnessing consumerism?
There are various adoption and mitigation strategies have been suggested by the very corporate interest segment. But once we accept that, we accept this pollution. So through whatever mechanism, through whatever solution, the emitting of carbon and this energy-based development, industrial development, and this create this mess we are talking about since more than a decade. So for me, any kind of reformist approach is not going to be solve our problem. Because we are talking about not climate change, for system change. Unless or until we will change the structure, there will be no sustainable climate change. And the only sustainable solution is the climate justice, where the community's right to be accepted, where the communities have the access to their natural resources, not the corporations. Like my friend from Nigeria mentioned, how Shell have exploited their natural resources. So whenever community uses their natural resources, it has its limit. But when it goes for profit and for corporate interest, there is no limits. So we need to understand very carefully that whatever strategies has been laid out and designed, it's only to save the corporate interest.
Thank you. Look.
Oh, okay. Yes.
I just thought I'd also answer because your question partly addressed the TPP. And I think that within the preferential trade agreements, I mean the TPP is a preferential trade agreement, not a free trade agreement, and it mimics some other structures we had like the WTO, except that the preferential trade agreements allow corporations to sue governments rather than just governments to sue governments. But even if we look at the WTO, the US is now suing India for providing preference to its own solar industry. India wants to develop its solar industry and develop its own, capacity to have clean energy. Not that the obligation should lie with them. The obligation clearly sits with the countries with the historical responsibility for climate change. But even when those countries want to do it, they're being sued. So India is being sued by the US. Within the TPP, if you become a signatory to it, you can be sued if you put a ban on fracking, for example, which has happened. These are the kind of things, though it's not possible to solve it with, a corporate-led revolution. It's very clear that somebody will profit from it, but it won't solve the issues of climate change. So they are these negotiations very much unlike the UN process. We don't of course we don't know exactly what's in the TPP, but we do know what the history of it tells us. And just on the question I think that Alejandra had, there are some things happening within the UN that I think are important as well that we haven't, in addition to the SDGs. So for example, in the Human Rights Council, there's been a resolution that we're to create a binding mechanism to regulate transnational corporations. Now this is a very fantastic achievement, and there's been another resolution around a debt workout mechanism when countries become deeply indebted. These two things have been happening because developed countries have come together and passed these resolutions. But for example, and we are working on what that should look like, and we're working in collaboration with governments on how to create this binding mechanism within the Human Rights Council. But the problem is that, quite frankly, the US is a rogue state. And this is what I think Noam Chomsky once called it, a rogue state, because it ignores international law and it undermines international law. It is a country that has never signed international agreements, and for this particular Human Rights Council resolution, it has openly said, we will not participate in setting up a body that regulates transnational corporations, and we will lobby our allies not to participate in the production of this. And in the General Assembly resolution of the debt mechanism, there are, I think, 6 states or so that voted against it: the US, Canada, Israel, UK, and whoever else, and Australia probably as well. Yeah, so those are that is the nature of the UN. We have many countries that would like to do something more, I guess, that we would see as potentially progressive, but we have too much power in some states, and particularly the rogue state of the US, I'm afraid to say.
Thank you. On that note, I believe unless there's anything burning from any of the other delegates, I'm sorry, questions will come back to, there'll be another second round of question time, and there will be a chance to speak directly to delegates now, but we're going to have just a little short break now. Is that right, Leon? Yes, we're going to have a little short break now, and come back in 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The song has already demonstrated everything. Together, we shall continue the struggle. And how are we going to construct the struggle? From the west to the south, to the east, to the north. A lot of things are happening. When you look at the injustices that are being perpetrated from the west to the south, to the north, and everywhere in the world, the people that are always at the end of it are the women and the children. And therefore, as women organizations sitting down here today, and for the People's Assembly, how do we go about it? What are the analysis? What can we take on from this?
How much of the solidarity do we have from around the world for this fight? We know that we have a lot of people that are joining us in this struggle, but is that enough? How much of the women, the ones that are sitting down here, has joined us in that struggle? Like I said earlier, an injury to one is an injury to all. If you think that it's happening only in the south and it's not affecting the north, wait until it comes to you, and then you will get to know the challenges that are there. Now, most of the times when we talk about the injustices that are happening to us, as civil society organizations or as civil society activists, we usually sit on the fence. And sitting on the fence will not lead us anywhere. And that brings me, Celestine, please can you stand up, let them see you again. Celestine was fighting injustices in the Ogoni land. But what did he do? He was always fighting on the fence. Now he's fighting inside. He maybe, perhaps you people didn't know, but he's now a local government chairman. And being a local government chairman means he can effect a lot of changes and those policies that we actually need. Please, can you sit down? Sorry, honorable. So, if we want change, and we want system to change, it means that we have to be part of that system. And how do we try to be part of the system? Somebody was just asking me a question, and I said, look, most of the times we talk about the issues that are happening to us globally, but we don't really try to engage. We come in the pages of the newspapers, we say all kinds of things. How much have we tried to engage those governments? They're all human beings. Some of them don't even know the issues. It might interest you that some of them don't even know those issues, and they're doing it just ignorantly. So in order for us to make sure that we impact and we effect the change, the system that we want it to be changed, we have to be part of it. We don't necessarily need to sit on the fence. Sitting on the fence will not bring about the changes that we need. What we need to do is to develop different kinds of advocacy and messages and strategies of how we can engage our governments and make sure that we change. And at the same time, don't say that we cannot be politicians. Because if we are not politicians, we cannot change that system. The injustices that is happening will continue. From the west to the north to the east, women are being raped. I come from Nigeria. The environmental insecurity that we have, and everybody is looking at it as part of, well, Boko Haram. But the truth about this is that from the north into the south, there's desert encroachment of about 0.06% annually. And it means that people are being displaced. It means that people are forced to migrate. It means that people are looking for greener areas where they will settle. And as they move with their culture, with their religion, and of course, the already scarce available resources that are existing in some part of the countries where they are moving. They come to settle there and they want to share. And that is where we have a lot of challenges. And that is where we have so much resistance. And that is where we have the uprising of the Boko Haram. So indeed, we need to look at the issues of climate change. How is climate change exacerbating the poverty and affecting the women and youth in this regard? Lake Chad in 1973 has shrunk up to about 20%. It means millions of people whose source of livelihood was on Lake Chad has been eroded. And unless we begin to look at the issues of climate change, either from the global south or from the global north, people will continue to migrate. And as they migrate, there will be uprising. And that was what happened yesterday when we were marching on the streets of New York to talk about the issues of migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Another big hand for Priscilla Achakpa, reminding us that climate change is a gender issue, it's a peace and security issue, it's an issue of international solidarity. Thank you very much, and we'll move right on to our next speaker on global analysis. From Trade Justice, it's Adam Weissman. Thank you, Honorable Delegate.
Thank you. Thank you. So I was asked to speak about the relationship between the objectives of the Sustainable Development Goals and the reality of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which, as we heard earlier, is being negotiated simultaneously. This, by the way, is a pattern of holding these high-minded meetings with lots of great platitudes and world leaders coming together with great fanfare, while simultaneously in the shadows these kind of negotiations take place. Last year, during the much heralded Peru climate talks, at the same time Trans-Pacific Partnership, literally the exact same time, Trans-Pacific Partnership negotiations were being held in New York City. Okay, so that works. So I have 5 minutes and there are 17 goals, so this is going to go really fast. And hopefully we'll fill you in later on what I missed. What's it? Okay. Okay, so just to run through the 17 goals as fast as I can and how TPP directly contradicts them. One of the goals is no poverty. The reality of free trade agreements like TPP is that they do not alleviate poverty. They do, for some countries, increase exports, but they do that without really creating wealth for working people. They create insecure, low-wage jobs. They push for a global race to the bottoms in terms of wages and working conditions, but they do not create prosperity. They do not bring people out of poverty. Zero hunger is one of the Sustainable Development Goals. The reality of free trade agreements is that they actually increase hunger and food insecurity. By forcing people off of sustainable local food models, they push people into globalized food markets where local agriculture is replaced with growing cash crops for exports, which means that people are dependent on the fluctuations of global market prices to be able to buy food for themselves instead of being able to feed their own communities. Another direct effect of free trade agreements in the case of NAFTA, for example, is the destruction of the commons, the theft of land from the commons as part of the term of free trade agreements. One of the SDGs is good health. The reality of agreements like TPP is that they have just the opposite effect. By pushing an aggressive regime of intellectual property relating to medicines, and in fact to medical procedures, one of the major agendas of TPP is to force generic drugs off the market, to expand data exclusivity for corporate pharmaceutical companies, to even privatize medical procedures, to really destroy the information commons for the benefit of pharmaceutical companies. Quality education is one of the goals, but the reality of agreements like TPP is that they push an aggressive agenda of privatization so that when an industry has been privatized, like education, it becomes difficult for that to be recaptured by the public sector. Corporations are empowered to bring investor rights suits when governments recognize that things like privatizing education have failed. Gender equality. One of the things being pushed through TPP is government procurement rules, and that can potentially, or a prohibition on government selective purchasing rules, that could potentially be used to attack policies like government procurement rules that benefit women-owned businesses. Clean water.
Just a moment, Adam. I'm just going to remind the honourable delegates on the side of the room that there are green and blue rooms available for side negotiations. But if we could just turn our attention to the delegate in the front of the room who has the floor. The floor is yours, Adam.
Thank you. Okay, so clean water and air. Okay, one of the industries that stands to benefit most from the Trans-Pacific Partnership is the fracking industry. As we heard before, this state of New York has banned fracking. That could potentially be challenged by an investor case under investor-state dispute settlement, meaning that our water supply could be threatened. Affordable and sustainable energy. In fact, one of the effects of that will be of increased commitment to liquid natural gas and to a global trade in LNG of fracked gas, is actually instead of making gas more affordable, it'll have just the opposite effect. By globalizing that market instead of keeping that market domestic in the U.S., that will actually drive up prices for U.S. consumers, and that effect will be felt. 1 minute left. Wow. Okay, moving on. Another example of sustainable energy under attack. There's a case where an energy company, Vattenfall, has sued Germany for attempting to ban nuclear power. We could, under an investor-state clause, we could see that kind of case under TPP if a country decided to shift away from nuclear power. Decent work and economic conditions, kind of addressed that before, running out of time. Industry and innovation. Innovation is actually directly under attack by agreements like TPP. Again, the intellectual property language is going to further constrict internet freedom and software innovation. Moving ahead. increased inequality, skipping because we did that. What else can we do with the time we have? Sustainable cities, government procurement rules relating to environmental policy could also be attacked. Things like buy local, buy green. Our attempts to move towards local food systems and create more sustainable food could be undermined. Responsible consumption. On a related note, one of the industries that is most interested in TPP is the global industrial meat industry, trying to shift more and more of the world into a Western and particularly US-style diet, heavy on consumption of animal products and particularly industrial animal products, while at the same time agencies ranging from UNFAO to ICC, to Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change are talking about for climate reasons, for water resource reasons, that we have to shift towards a diet lower in animal products. So moving at direct cross purposes. Let's see, how are we on time? Life on land being undermined. We saw under the US-Peru Free Trade Agreement, there was a forestry annex that was supposed to address issues of deforestation in Peru. Didn't work, broken promises. Life in water. Time over. Okay, I'll wrap up on this one. Life in water. The shark finning was one of the things that people hoped was going to be addressed in TPP. Instead, we got empty environmental promises. Subsidies to the commercial fishing industry will be allowed under TPP. A lot more I didn't get to here. TPP is going to be terrible, needless to say. And this is why we're hearing about all these wonderful goals, while at the same time the real corporate agenda is being pushed through the negotiations that are happening in Atlanta this coming week. People will be protesting. If we can, we should join them. Find out more about this issue at tradejustice.net. Thanks.
Thank you, Adam, for packing in a lot into a very short time. Clearly a very knowledgeable speaker, just as have been all our honourable delegates. And there will be now a chance, of course, to delve into these issues in much more detail. But first, if the People's Choir doesn't mind just throwing a bit of a development justice chant at us. Have you got something for us, People's Choir?
¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Cuándo? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Cuándo? Ahora. ¿Qué queremos? Justicia. ¿Cuándo? Ahora.
Thank you to the People's Choir and to all our formal official delegates that have spoken today. We'd now like to open it up to the rest of the People's Assembly. We're going to be having, you can either make a comment, a solidarity statement, or ask a question. We'd just like to keep them to between 1 and 2 minutes, and we do have a timer in the back of the room so that everyone who would like to have a chance to interact will be able to do so. Okay, are there any questions that you'd like to kick off the discussion with? Thank you. We've actually got a mic up here, so perhaps if you could just come and join us. No, you'd like the mic back there? It's all right, I can comply.
If I go up there, I'll go for a speech. 5 minutes. Okay, I'll stay here. Anyway, thank you. I'm Jiten Yumnam from Manipur in northeast part of India, and it's so enlightening to listen to some of the most, leaders from all over, and especially listening to the women leaders. And so that's a real inspiration for us as well. I just have a question on the Trans-Pacific Agreement. It's more on the fracking, because it's a real concern, because we heard so much about the impact of fracking in the US and in our own territory. I mean, of course, we heard the stories of shale, but in our own land also there are plans to drill oil and the contemporary. That is a concern, but then we are worried about if fracking is also included as part of the larger effort to be exported from US, the kind of whatever. I think that's a concern. So I just wanted to, the last speaker to just share a little bit on that. Otherwise, from our people, from our state, from Manipur, we also wanted to extend our full solidarity to all the struggles, try to liberate our land, try to, to fight back all capitalism, all imperialist led kind of destructive form of development, which has caused so much of suffering all over. Long live international solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you to our colleague from Manipur. I'll throw that back at Adam. I've lost Adam. Adam, you're here. Thank you. Good, because I couldn't answer that question. If you could answer the question that was posed around fracking and how TPP could send fracking out.
Okay. There are a few areas where TPP could affect fracking. One is what I sort of zoomed over is just looking at the domestic U.S. context, first of all, this is actually global. The investor-state dispute settlement under TPP would empower fracking companies to sue governments in international tribunals outside the jurisdiction of any of the member countries' national court system. And there's a case actually going on just like that right now in Canada under the North American Free Trade Agreement, where the province of Quebec banned fracking. A company called Lone Pine Resources, which is ostensibly a Canadian company, however, since under ISDS, a country cannot sue its own government. Foreign countries are given special powers. So foreign companies are given special powers. The company is using a U.S. subsidiary in order to sue Canada, claiming that this new legislation is an infringement on its expected future profits. And that's what makes ISDS so insidious. ISDS is not, we demand to be compensated for our investment. ISDS is, we get to pull out our crystal ball and say that if you hadn't passed this legislation, if this regulatory policy hadn't gone into effect, if this court ruling had never happened, this is how much money we might have made from this mine. This is how much money we might have made from exporting this carcinogenic chemical. This is how much money we might have made from this extraction project that has not happened yet. This is how much we believe we would have made, and you are now liable to compensate us for the full value of that theoretical earnings as a regulatory taking. So it is an it has direct consequence for countries that are sued under ISDS, but it also has a direct chilling effect on regulation going into effect in the first place, because countries don't want to face, as in the case of Peru, something like, I believe it's $800 million, where Peru is being sued for demanding remediation of one of the 10 most toxic sites in the world, a smelter site, under the U.S.-Peru Free Trade Agreement. Another area that is this is somewhat in a U.S.-specific context, but in the U.S. there is legislation that says that when the U.S. is in a free trade agreement with a country, the normal community approval process for the creation of liquid natural gas export terminals is circumvented. Basically, communities are stripped of their right to actually have a say over the projects going up in their own communities. But one of our real concerns, and this goes beyond fracking and really to unsustainable fuels altogether, is that agreements like TPP are really designed to lock countries into the creation of new energy infrastructure, new unsustainable energy infrastructure, new fossil fuel infrastructure, to deepen our commitment to these destructive fuels into the future. So instead of looking at investment in alternative energy, instead of looking at developing solar and wind, it means pumping more money into investment in fossil fuel development, and then giving corporations this assurance that those investments really won't be challenged through regulation by virtue of ISDS.
Thank
Does
you.
that address your question?
Thank you, Adam.
Okay.
You can stick that back in the thing there. All right. Any other questions from the floor? We've got one here.
Not a question, but So, I'd just like to first of all thank. So I'm Samir from ActionAid, and we're in solidarity with all you guys. And I'd just like to thank the conveners of this space. I used to do this when I was with 50 Years Is Enough many years ago. And I'm very grateful to see this kind of space here. But one of the beautiful things about this space is that we can learn each other's cultures, each other's languages. So we have Bangladeshi, sorry, I don't,
Yeah,
name.
she's also. Zahida Begum.
Zahida Apa and Najma Apa.
And Shantulya Apa.
Okay. They will sing together.
Take the leader.
Please.
Then she and me will take
Just Bangla.
No, we can do Bangla and English both.
Okay.
Okay,
We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, I do believe we shall overcome someday. Amra আমরা করব জয় একদিন। We are not alone, we are not alone, we are not alone today. Oh, deep in my heart, we do believe that we are not alone today. Amra নই একা, আমরা নই একা, আমরা নই একা আজকে। আহা বুকের গভীরে আমরা জেনেছি যে আমরা নই একা আজকে। No. We didn't finish. We are not afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid today. Oh, deep in my heart, we do believe that we are not afraid today. Someone, we shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in my heart, we do believe that we shall overcome someday. Thank you.
Even the People's General Assembly can be hijacked by people within the People's General Assembly. It's awesome. It's awesome. Thank you. That's amazing. We've just got a few more minutes for any other burning questions, burning discussions before we'll come to our final speaker of the evening. So I'll just open the floor one last time. All right. In that case, I know that was amazing. I also feel like I have nothing left to say after that, which is just as well. So I would like to invite our final wrap-up speaker of the evening, Chamtili Haq, to join us up the front here. You've heard her sing, now hear her speak, all at the one place, the People's General Assembly. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I am actually a sort of an introvert, so I think it's because of Nazma Appa's inspiration that she pulled me up to sing. And it's a beautiful song, and there's a lot more beautiful songs in Bangla around activism and labor. My name is Shamtoli. I don't want to take too much time. For many years, I was born in Bangladesh. I came here as a child in 1972, and I grew up in a working class community in New York City. And so I've been working for about 15 years, almost longer, around labor, immigrant rights. And the lens in which I've done my activism has been not just about the United States, but how do we do work here locally in solidarity with the global South. And so I think I was asked to sort of make some remarks around that. And so first of all, I am humble and honored to be able to give some remarks, because you've basically heard all the analysis, all the speak from our brothers and sisters from Nigeria, from Bangladesh, from Indonesia, from Sri Lanka, from all over the globe. So I just sort of add my sort of humble bit to that. So a couple of things I just want to mention. When we talk about development, we have to talk about development not in the way that has been said, which is about not respecting and honoring the knowledge of indigenous peoples. Because development that we talk about oftentimes is around this notion of modernization, around an urban bias in favor of modern industrial agriculture. You've heard from the brother from Pakistan around farming communities around the world that are fighting against Monsanto. Sri Lankan brother, we need help in Bangladesh, because Bangladesh has pretty much given itself to be the first country in South Asia to be a field trial for GMO crops. And so the fight that folks do here has an impact globally in the global South, like in a place like Bangladesh. So when we think about development, it has to be rooted in the practice of indigenous people, of communities of color, and the knowledge of women that we've already heard. It cannot be the development that we talk about from corporate interests. So let's keep that in mind. The other thing we want to keep in mind is also that, we talked a lot about insider-outsider. The UN was created in a time of Cold War to protect certain interests of the global, one of the major sort of global countries. So we can do insider-outsider work. I don't want to get into a long conversation about that, but we have to know the origins of the institution and the space in which we operate. I will say that NYU Law School and NYU as an institution, we should be mindful as we sit in this space, is building in Dubai and is currently in the process of exploiting a number of migrant laborers in the Middle East. And I think there's a lot of NYU law students who are working around that. So when we engage in spaces, we have to know the benefit and the risk. How much are we giving up and what are we getting back in return? So engage in the spaces, know the origins of those spaces. So we heard about market approaches to deregulation. So as a lawyer who has fought with a lot of local groups over the years, I just want to end with a couple of comments around law and how law has been consistently used to give greater power to corporate interests. It's very interesting how when we talk about TPP and we talk about corporate rights, increasingly the Supreme Court and other countries around the world are giving greater legal rights to corporate interest. But, God forbid you mention that human rights should be given a binding instrument. Human rights, as Kate had mentioned, should be binding and accountable on corporations. Then we have a lot of discussions and resolutions and a lot of process, right? So I think that when we think about market approaches, we have to think about approaches that prioritize people and their rights over the power of corporate interest. I think that we have to be very clear about what is it that we're fighting about. And I think that I'm very clear about that. When I'm clear about that, I know what spaces I need to engage in. We have a lot of rights. We have a lot of rights in America, a lot of rights everywhere. Every lawyer talks about you have rights, you have rights. But the reality is that a lot of those rights are not based in communities of color, are not based in indigenous communities around the world. They're not based in poor and marginalized communities. And so when we analyze whether we have in fact a rights system, we have to look at whether in fact those who need most protection have those rights. So what I say is we have a rights-based rhetoric, but we do not have a right-based legal system or culture, right? So we have to think about sort of strategies to improve that. The last thing I wanted to sort of mention is that goals, sustainable development goals. Well, goals are things that are not binding, that are not required, and not enforceable. So we need to make those binding, enforceable, and we have to actualize that on the ground onto people and to people of color and communities around the world. So when we talk about some of these sustainable development goals, and I think the brother from Trade Justice did an excellent job in really focusing our attention around the Trans-Pacific Partnership, we could be doing all of these great goals and then eviscerating it all in 1 second through this trade agreement. And we have a lot of experience around trade agreements not alleviating poverty. We have experience with that. We have evidence of that. So it's not new to us, so we should look back at those. The last thing I just wanted to sort of mention is that, those of us who are lawyers, we are at a law school. If you are in the room, as lawyers, we oftentimes graduate and we stand on the side of corporate interests. It's not very sexy sometimes to stand on the side of poor people. It's not very economical. You don't make a lot of money. But I want to encourage young people who are thinking about, the way of using the law and to enforce rights for poor people, to stand beside an assembly like this, stand beside movements. And I encourage you to think about being what's called a movement lawyer, a lawyer that stands irrespective of your politics, of your interest, that you stand with the most marginalized. Because ultimately, you are reinforcing the interests of corporate interests, And unless you fight that interest as a lawyer, we really are doing a disservice to our brothers and sisters that are fighting in Nigeria, on the ground, and in Bangladesh, where if you form an organization or union, you basically face the baton, rubber bullets. It doesn't matter if you're a woman, you're brutally beat up. So those of us here, particularly in the global north, actions we take, reform that we take, all of our strategies have a devastating impact on those, our brothers and sisters around the world. So as we think about our own strategies, compromises that we make, think very hard. Is your choices and decisions that you're making here, how will it impact those of our brothers and sisters around the globe? So I think that we should be really accountable not only to our own nation states, but to people around the globe. And the last thing, we didn't have a long conversation about this global strike. I want us to think about this a little bit seriously. Strike, I think, is scary to a lot of people because they think about this sort of chaos. But strike oftentimes is basically withdrawing your participation from a system that is no longer respecting you as a person, as a human being. And so I think that what this global strike idea that Nazma raised, and I think Kate has raised, is to ask us to think about, are you interested in continuing to participate in a system that does not respect our human rights? If you say that you refuse to participate in a system that does not respect you as a human being, if you agree on that principle, then let's think about the tactic of how to realize that, right? Sometimes we get so scared by a strategy and say, oh no. But if you believe that each of us deserve the right to be treated with respect, to have an environment free of pollution, to live with dignity, then let's think about concretely how we can make that a reality. So I'm going to end there. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's hear it for our people's lawyer. Thank you so much. Amazing. Well, that brings us to the end of the very formal part of our People's General Assembly and almost to the end of my duties as People's Secretary General. Thank you for bearing with me. Before we close up, of course, there are many, many people to thank. First of all, you, the members, the people who make up the Assembly. It's, of course, movements are built on each and every one of us, and without all of you present today, there would be no Assembly. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the delegates who took part. Some with more notice than others, but all amazing speakers. So a very big thank you to all the people's delegates. You were amazing. There are also all those behind the scenes, one just leaving the room now, whom we need to thank. The Asia Pacific Forum for Women, Law and Development. The team was led by Kate, but a lot of the work done by Leanne Sajor, so a very big thank you to her. A thank you to all our partners that you see up there on the banner, including our partners from WIDO and the various members of the APRSM, and also IBON International, and all of those who've been part of the campaign for a better future, a more just development for all. So thank you very much, of course, to our impromptu People's Choir. You've been amazing. Leanne. And on that note, that very musical note, we would like to finish off the evening. Oh, before I do that, for those who are interested, The Road to Development Justice will be playing after this. And before we end on a musical note, I think our hardworking Leanne has an announcement.
Hi everyone, one last thing. When you came into the space, we gave you these surveys. If you still have them, please fill them out. We'd like to hear from you. And just hand it over to me when you get out. So, but yeah, over to the choir.
Thank you. Please do it as a nice personal favor to Leanne and a thank you for all that delicious cheese. Here's your form filled out. I think it's reasonable. All right, so thank you. And yes, we would like to end on that. I think I told you about the video that we'll be playing after this, The Road to Development Justice, for those who are interested. Yes? Okay, and now to the very final musical note of the evening, I would like to invite up Mother Tongue. It's a band of POC folks who relate on their diasporic experiences, both recent or ancestral, and whose genre-fluid music reflects those experiences. Let's hear it for Mother Tongue.
Mic check, 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 check. too short. You need to get out of there. Hi, as mentioned, we are Mother Tongue, and so the song that we're about to do is a song that Cole wrote, and I'm going to let them speak about it. But it has to do with an area in Mindanao, and so we're going to do that song, and then we're going to lead into a quick verse about forced migration. So I'm going to let Cole just kind of talk about the song Sama Sama.
Yeah, so I wrote this song called Sama Sama, it means together, and I wrote it when I was in the Philippines this summer in a region called Caraga, and recently what happened was 3 activists were murdered in an indigenous school. They were Lumad activists, and in the Lumad region, many young children, many Lumad people don't have access to schools, and what they've done is create out of their own blood, sweat, and tears these beautiful schools around and taught by their cultural workers and teachers that come from the community. And what's been happening is there's been increased militarization of the area because corporations want to come in and plunder. And with things like the TPPA, more and more regions of the Philippines are under threat, and more activists and organizers and a lot more indigenous people are at risk. So this goes out to them. In my mind, the rhythm of the days gone past. Lumab in España, the movement Aguinaldo sold out. The Maki Bisugo, Mapasu runs fast, running deep like iron ore. The military wants so bad, but the power of the people says in debt and pushes back. Defend ancestral lands from the bureaucrats and stacks. And when I slow it all down, I hear the whisper of the land singing, "Land is life, and without it, there's no turning back." She said, "Ate Lumaban makibisu." I can hear the movement and it's calling me, and it's calling me. She said, "Ate Lumaban makibisu." I can hear the movement and it's calling me, and it's calling me.
If I may take this time to speak on all my folks in the U.S. who feel like they don't belong, like this can't be home, cause home is the sun, home is the mountains it hides behind when the day is done. Home is Casa Buhay, our song sung. Home is my mother tongue, spoken out so strong, steady, with no confused faces. But even when I learn their language, still they can't embrace it. Speak English, they shout. Even when I do, this can't be my home, now they're in my home too. Shouting, speak English, and digging at the sun's mountains, now they're so bare. The trees you can count on my left home, cause they came there with jobs paying nothing. They took our land and food, so I had to do something. But now here I am, I see the land of broken promise. Uncle Sam takes our land, then expects us to pay homage. Uncle Sam takes our land, then expects us to pay homage. But rest assured, just as sure as the sun doesn't stay behind the mountains where it hides, my people, we shall rise and reclaim, we shall rise and reclaim. Stand together, don't take their shame, we've nothing to lose but our chains. We've nothing to lose but our chains. We've nothing to lose but our chains. Thank you.
Thank you. We are Mother Tongue.
Also, we have a show October 2nd, which is a fundraiser for us to go on an exposure trip to the Philippines, a few of us, to be able to be with the people there in solidarity and to experience the concrete conditions there. So if you're available, it will be an ABC No Real. Look us up on Facebook, Mother Tongue. Thanks.